Thanks for joining me, everyone. Today I am here with JP Marsh, and as per usual, we are going to talk about mental health, overcoming, and becoming your best self. And JP here is an expert in co-parenting and relationships. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for taking the time to join us. I
Oh,
know
no
that you
problem.
are busy.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
Where did your journey start?
Oh, well, I mean, the journey of healing probably started about 7 years ago. My daughter's mother and I had split up right after my daughter turned 2, and she's 9. And it was the normal sort of high conflict, the tit for tat, the trigger you, trigger me, automatic defensiveness, yada yada yada. The same kind of stuff that everybody goes through a little bit. But around the same time, in the same month that we had split up, because when you split up and you move out, what do you move in with your folks because you're starting over, so you got to have somewhere to sleep. And I'd say like probably 3 weeks after I moved back in with my folks, my dad died unexpectedly. So then they dumped that on me. And then with the bickering and the fighting and just sort of getting into a funk of just, my new reality as a single parent, but also I couldn't escape my mom's grief, but then was trying to, deal with my daughter's mother and then the conflict there and all these different things. And then it just wasn't the life I wanted. I wasn't happy, wasn't doing anything, wasn't moving forward. Just, you know, so then as I started really dissecting my past and going through all my childhood trauma and the trauma from my teenage years and the baggage from my young adult and throughout my 20s and the numbing and the alcohol and not wanting to be me because I was sort of I wasn't there was only me and my brother, so there was no middle child. But growing up, it was a lot of the middle child syndrome of, I didn't demand a lot of attention. I was an easy kid, but my brother demanded a lot of attention, so I was kind of the forgotten child in that whole dynamic. Which at some point started relating to unlovable, didn't deserve to be around, have people that made me happy or be happy in my life, and it just dominoed into my not wanting to be me by the time I was a teenager and self-destructing and numbing all through my 20s and all of that stuff.
That's a lot. And that's
It's,
coming from someone else that also went through a lot, right?
right.
Right. I mean, I have the privilege that the only people that call me mom were my babies from social work,
Mm-hmm.
not my literal children. I'm
Right.
only emotionally responsible for them.
Right.
That
Right.
that's a lot easier even when they are self-destructing teenagers.
Right. And it was growing up, like my dad quit drinking when I was young, 5, 6 years old. And so we'd spend a lot, I had all the information and it didn't seem to make a difference because we spent a lot of time in AA. We spent a lot of time down at the AA meetings. He was going to one or two a day for probably the first 5, 7, 8 years of his sobriety. And so, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, it was a community of people. There wasn't court ordered people down there in the mix yet. It was the potlucks were still going strong. And so the work I do now, the helping people and this and that, it wasn't out of my realm. With the AA, you got sponsors, somebody 3 to 5 years behind you on the same sort of journey that you're helping to, look out for these booby traps or watch out for that pitfall. This way of thinking is going to be destructive to you, that kind of stuff. And so So some of it became easy, but until you look inward and sort of sort through your own shit, it doesn't matter how much information you have, because you're not going to do any of it. You're not going to do the work. You can have all the information available. I mean, everybody has the information available now, but until you can look at yourself in the mirror and identify your own triggers, a lot of the co-parenting stuff was me. You know what I mean? Was I the co-parent that I wanted her to be, that I wanted to deal with all the time? You know what I mean? And no, I wasn't, because I would instantly get defensive over nothing. And then it would, two people throwing gas on a fire, and it just, nothing gets accomplished.
Exactly. It's when you fight fire with fire, you only get more fire. And
right.
That's something that honestly we all forget in relationships, even when we aren't co-parenting, before we've done the brute work of our healing.
Right.
Were there any pivotal moments in the healing journey itself where things actually changed and got momentum in your recovery, instead of just doing the work and feeling the nothing at, let's say, the beginning stage?
Well, I mean, as I started to, I sort of figured out these little hacks, as far as when I stopped looking at my daughter's mother, because I'll say my daughter's mother, and very, very rarely, and most of the time I'll catch myself, like, I never say my ex, because that's not who she is in my reality anymore. Like, and once I could get that mindset and perception to really root in and take hold, then it became a lot easier, because the anger went away, the shame and the animosity and the being able to get triggered by her or trigger her or push buttons, or, you know what I mean? And then everything, as I started looking at her differently, then it made me treat her differently, which in turn made her treat me differently. And then it just became leaps forward, because you could have difficult conversations, and you could have, conversations that didn't constantly lead into, well, why, or who's at your house, or why, you know what I mean? And then, the moment that it really seemed to that it was the most noticeable is we'd made a deal pretty early on that if it was my time with my daughter, or if it was her time with our daughter, the other parent got first call. So if something came up, if she got a call from a bunch of her girlfriends that were all going out or had tickets to a concert, or whatever the case may be, I would get first call, because who doesn't want extra time with their kids, right? And when we were able to do that without it getting thrown in each other's faces later on, then that's when I really noticed that we were starting to get into like a good spot and a good space, because we weren't being petty about stuff. You know what I mean? Like, well, maybe you shouldn't have your daughter the next time it's your weekend if you're not going to have her this week. You know what I mean? Like, none of that stuff was ever thrown back in your face later on. And then that was when I started noticing, that things just were, we were just two people that have a child together that were trying to do the best we could for our child.
See, and I'm glad you guys got there. But the attachment, like, that is such a hard thing for everyone. And not just co-parenting with someone you're no longer with, but an ex, a past situation.
Right.
We all white knuckle grip our pain points.
Right.
And carry them as if they are part of our identity, instead of looking for the solution.
Right. And it's when you can, when, like, I had it set in my mind, when we were done, we were done. In an earlier relationship, I did the back and forth, drug it out for a lot longer than it ever should have even, and it was misery. But when you can leave the pity party and just kind of get out of your own way. If you're not happy, the relationship's done, you broke up, you're fighting all the time. I mean, it doesn't really, I mean, even if you're not quite broken up, but you think you want to, or you're starting to have those thoughts or whatever, let the relationship die. Don't try to hold on to certain aspects. Don't try to, you know what I mean? Like use the good and the bad as learning experiences. You know, the bad obviously deal with and try to not carry around a bunch of baggage and bleed all over your next partner, because that's not going to be healthy either. But you have to look at it and treat it like somebody died, because that's what happened. You can't latch on to these and only think about the positives or the good things that happened through that relationship, and disregard and be a blind eye to all of these, you know, whether it be toxic or abuse or narcissism or what, you know, whatever the case may be, or infidelity. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can't turn a blind eye to those and only remember the times that they took you to nice dinners, or took you on a trip, or did something special for your birthday. You know what I mean? Because if that's all you're focusing on, then you're going to be stuck in that blissful part of that relationship, and you're not going to be able to move forward and let the relationship just go.
Exactly. Like, so many people are looking at their like recent breakup or even breakups from years ago with these rose-colored glasses. And
right.
That is half of why, even though they're still in counseling, they've never made any progress, because they still have that ex on a pedestal. Because, I mean, even if it was healthy and it just died of natural causes,
right?
They hold on to those minuscule moments of good, and for some reason cognitively wire themselves to not see the potential good in everything else in life.
Right. Or, you know, you also even get the flip side of that too, where people get addicted to the chaos and get addicted and accustomed to the stress or the feeling of inadequacy, or, you know, I mean, whatever the case may be. I mean, you can become addicted to anything, or get into a vicious cycle of anything, because if you're in a state of chaos and it becomes normal that you're normal, when you break up and you meet somebody who isn't generating all that chaos, you don't know what to do. You're going to, you know, then that's when they start sabotaging, and they'll start creating that chaos with somebody who, you know what I mean, which is ultimately, you know, bleeding on the person that wasn't cutting you off, you know, for the most part, or making somebody else serve the jail time for a crime they didn't commit, because now all of a sudden you haven't dealt with your baggage, but you're so accustomed to chaos or whatever feelings. You know, I use chaos a lot because a lot of people just tend to have these chaotic relationships that are unhealthy. And then once they get out of that relationship, they just jump right into either another one, or they create one with somebody who wasn't that way. You know, before they sort of deal with that baggage. You kind of, you know, you have to get to a place where you can be alone with yourself and be okay being alone, because there's a big difference between being alone and being lonely. And I think people are so scared to be lonely.
Exactly. I am one of those people my whole life. I do not feel lonely alone. Surround me with a group of people. And then, like, less so now because I have better people. Right. But it's more likely that I'm in a crowd at an event with friends where it's, no, I'm all alone.
Right.
Versus at home, in the office, working on the futon, the rest of my house is empty. Do I feel alone? Right. No. And also because I'm very comfortable in my own being. And that's where, even though I'm incredibly extroverted, because I am so comfortable in my own solitude, people misread me as an introvert.
Right.
I'm like, I don't even like being alone. I just like being with people that make me want to be social.
Right. Right. And it's, you know, being able to be alone is definitely a good thing, because then you're not going to need the presence of bad people for you in your life constantly. You know what I mean? But also dealing with the baggage from relationships. And this is one of the deals that I had to, that I probably spent the most amount of time with, because I wasn't good at difficult conversations. I was more of a people pleaser type personality, just from the trauma and the baggage from my childhood, just trying to, if I do everything for you and I play this part and act like the person that I think you want, then you'll want me back or want me in your company, or, whatever. But like, getting through that, then it became a deal where I got in the habit of being able to have difficult conversations, communicate boundaries, communicate wants, communicate needs, communicate what I find appropriate for somebody that I'm romantically involved with, professionally involved with, socially involved with. You know what I mean? Like, it became a lot easier to communicate these things, because, nobody's a mind reading. And something that'll really get resentment going in any kind of relationship, whether it, be with your kids, be with your significant other, ex, boss, coworkers, business partners, thinking that they should automatically know what your boundaries are or what your standards are, values, morals, and, all the combination of all of those things. If you can't communicate those and they overstep or disregard, or they don't know that they're doing it, but you're going to start getting angry about it, resentful for it. You know what I mean? So whose fault is it? You're going to blame them, obviously, but you're not the one able to express it.
Exactly. And when you've learned how to communicate and set boundaries and become really comfortable being alone, it's really hard to date again.
It is. It is. I struggle with it.
Because you see one red flag that's not like a cautionary flag, but a oh no, and you run for the hills, because you're no longer attracted to the chaos, the turmoil, the just abuse. Like, because you've dealt with your cycle, you actually stop repeating it.
Right. Excuse me. And I mean, I was dating a woman for probably, up till like 6 months ago. We dated, scarcely dated. You know what I mean? She had her co-parenting stuff. She had 2 boys, one in middle school, one in high school. I have my daughter, and she lived like 35, 40 miles away. So it was, trying to schedule things when I didn't have my daughter and she didn't have her boys, because her co-parenting relationship was not like mine. And so it was a little more, when the boys aren't around, I don't want to, yada, yada. But her whole situation was different. But like, it was kind of wild, because then it'd been a long time since I'd gotten to where it was more than just kind of dating. It was somebody that I'd talk to quite often and be around a lot more. And there was, every once in a while something would pop up, and I would really have to sit down and kind of journal about it to figure out if it's actually a red flag or if it's a trigger for me that I haven't identified yet. So then I got to backtrack to figure out if it's just something so similar to what my daughter's mother used to do, or somebody that I dated in my 20s, or maybe even that my mom would say, or something growing up, you know what I mean? Like some sort of action or tendency or something like that. And I'd have to deconstruct it to figure it out. But then it makes it easier to, bring it up. Then it made it easier to bring it up to her. Like, hey, like I feel some kind of way when this, and this, you know what I mean? I don't mind not being in your ex-husband's face or being around your boys if you're not prepared for that. Because, she was married for 20 years, got divorced. We started dating like a year after they got divorced. So she'd never really dated or anything, and stuff like that. And I was patient. I understood a lot of those things, but, the couple times where it felt like I was almost being hidden more so than just, you know what I mean? Like I didn't exist more so than just not in their faces, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, it's like, well, you know, I kind of feel a certain way about this. Like, so I got to figure out if it's me, if it's actually something, you know, same as anything else, if it's actually something that I need to, you know, once I figure out why I feel a certain kind of way about this situation, that situation, or whatever, then it's easier to bring it up to them and be like, hey, you know, I feel a certain kind of way about this, this, and this. Like, let's have a conversation about it, or, you know,
Right.
I know what was your intention, or, you know what I mean? Like maybe you meant it, maybe I took it completely different than it face value, or then you meant it, or, you know what I mean? Because misunderstandings happen a lot. If you're not very good at communicating, it's hard to get clarity on anything.
Well, and I especially love that you intentionally take that self-reflection period to first decide, like, if it's a red flag or a, like, trigger with you.
Right.
But then also to look at it, is this a me issue or is this an issue with my partner? And do we need to discuss this, or do I just need to deal with my crap?
Right.
Because if we could all do that, none of us would be fighting in relationships, because we'd all be communicating our feelings effectively.
Oh yeah. And it's, you know, I think like stupid misunderstandings, or the way that something is presented as opposed to the way it's received, is like the number one thing that starts the animosity, anger, resentment in relationships. But I mean, once you start to sort of explore different aspects, you know, very early on, me and her, we, you know, I figured out what her love languages were, or appreciation languages, as some people like to call them. And she knew what mine were, you know what I mean? And then it, you know, some of those things that a lot of people sort of get their wires crossed, because, you know, say she's gifts and I'm words of affirmation. You know, I don't need gifts. That's your deal, not mine, you know, but like, come help me do stuff around the house, or, you know, whatever. Like that makes me feel more appreciated. And knowing those things makes it easier to just live in more harmony, you know?
Well, and it's funny because people have forgotten that how you receive love and how you give love are likely two different things. And yes, as we age, we generally learn to adopt a more lenient method than just, no, these are my primary two. No, I know how to give you love how you need it. And I also know how to receive it in the other languages when you're not jiving with mine.
Right.
But, like, before most people are in their mid to late 30s, they're not there, especially if they haven't started doing their healing.
Right.
I mean, I'm super fortunate. I've been in counseling since I was 11. And then I became a mental health professional.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I don't, outside of certain court ordered type stuff when I was drinking real hard in my late teens, early 20s, getting in, excuse me, you know, the troubles, the legal troubles that come with, you know, drinking real to numb yourself all the time. But like, I've done a little bit of counseling here and there, but for me, I consume more information. And so like I have a close knit of friends that I can open up to, talk about stuff, whatever's bugging me, this and that, yada yada. But, you know, I don't watch TV, but I listen to 60 plus audiobooks a year, about 200 hours a month, give or take. And because I don't watch TV, but I can also listen while I'm at work all day, and I listen to it while I'm driving and doing all these things. And so I listen to a ton of books on mental health and perspective. and mindset and early childhood development and negotiating and how to talk to people and how to become more memorable and how to, the love languages and all of these different things, because it's, the information's there and you can find all these hacks to be able to just sort of mold and meld into any social group or any sort of situation that you're in and kind of talk to anybody, because once you can realize tendencies or the, facial expressions on people and this and that, and you can find that thing that'll instantly connect you, then you're connected because they'll remember, you know what I mean? It's just weird little things, but being able to find a good counselor or, like I'm all for it for people if that's, the route that they would like to take. Me personally, I consume a lot of books and that kind of helps me because I can process. But I do a lot of journaling and I do a lot of stuff,
Right. But you're actively using the tools that you've learned through your method. And that's all that matters. As long as you are effectively dealing with your crap and working towards living like a happy life where you thrive and you feel fulfilled, that's it. Whether it's audiobooks or paperbacks or coaching, counseling, exercise, it doesn't matter as long as you are happy.
Right. Well, I sort of got out of the whole idea of a happy life. I mean, I do a lot of mindfulness. Like I meditate every day and I read a lot of the meditation, the mindfulness training, that kind of stuff, which is, being present and being okay with whatever comes, whether it's good or bad, which is a little bit more my style because I've always been just sort of that in the middle sort of personality. But I live a fulfilling, peaceful life. Like I am 100% content with the life that I live. I have a physical job, so I get my exercise. And my daughter's mother lives 6 blocks away from me. My daughter comes and goes as she pleases. She just got out of 3rd grade. She's out of town right now. They went on vacation, but she's grounded at mom's. She's grounded at dad's. She eats basically the same meals at both places. If she can't have her tablet there, she can't have her tablet here, and vice versa. She has chores here. She has chores there. When summertime rolls around, my daughter's in a blended family now. So there's her mother, and basically stepdad and stepbrother. But we all do barbecues in the summertime and all do like certain holidays here and there. And, obviously like stepbrother, stepdad doesn't go to the dance recitals because, nobody except the parents actually want to go to a 9-year-old's dance recital because they're just kind of spinning circles anyway. But, we sit by each other at all these different things and do all these things. But, even in the summer times when we do some of the barbecues or some of the lake trips, it's like me, the woman I was dating last summer, my daughter's and her mother's whole family, that blended family, plus his ex-wife, her husband and their baby, so there's like 8-10 of us that are all sort of interconnected somehow, but all at the same place at the same time. It's not that big a deal.
See, and it's really beautiful that you guys found a way to not just work through it, but to still have that entire community where you are active parts of each other's lives, even if it's only because you share a kid.
Right. And I don't get it because he had nothing to do with our relationship falling apart. You know what I mean? He came later. So like, I don't understand why, why would I dislike him? It's got nothing to do with me. It's not like he's stepped in, you know what I mean? Or anything like that. And it also kind of helps that we're in a rural area. We're in a small town. We're out, I live in eastern Montana in a town of like 6,000 people. The closest town that has more than 20,000 people is Billings, and that's a 3.5 hour drive. The other one is probably Fargo, and that's like a 5.5 hour drive in North Dakota. I mean, like there's no truck route through here, and it's still a very slow paced, blue collar, rural, conservative sort of lifestyle. But nobody's responsible for anybody else's relationships falling apart. So nobody makes it weird. So I guess it just doesn't end up being weird.
Right. Well, but that's a lot of maturity.
Right.
Because you see a lot of people today playing that blame game. And it's no, everything lives, but everything also dies of natural causes eventually, whether it's, like a literal death or just it's no more.
Right. Right. And it's, where we live, most all of us, there's a group of, with kids, probably about 25 of us that live in this town, but we're all from the same town in Oregon, which is, equally a smaller town. And then all live here now. And so outside of people that we've all intertwinedly met here, and a lot of them have lived here for 10 plus years. Whereas me, my daughter, and her mother moved here like 3.5 years ago. But we've all known of each other most of our lives because we grew up in a small town, right? And so everybody from there kind of just, it's just the social group that everybody had. A lot of them are related and that kind of stuff, but it's just kind of the social group that they all had beforehand. And so we just kind of merged in, but everybody's adults. You know what I mean? We're all like 40 years old. So, I mean, anybody got time to do this weird jealousy stuff or possessiveness or, the bickering. And, some of those things I'm not saying doesn't happen in that social group. It's just none of it has anything to do with me. So I just don't get involved.
And that is always the easiest and best part, when it's happening, but it doesn't involve you.
Right.
Like when you can sit there and you can enjoy your beverage while listening to the fact that it's going on and just be grateful that it's not you. Okay.
And I mean, and then there's, I don't judge people because I don't like people to judge me. And so, whatever they do for, like, I don't drink. I mean, not that I'm in recovery, but I don't drink. Like, very rarely. I think I drank last 4th of July. I had a couple beers or something. And then it was like a year and a half before that, at Christmas Eve, I had like a drink. You know what I mean? So it's very rare that I just drink. Which I think is one of the things that sort of made the biggest difference with my daughter's mother, because I was a heavy drinker. You know what I mean? And it just kind of, it's not a conscious thing. It's not something that I really have to put any mental energy into. It just kind of, my daughter was born, and then probably within 3 years, I just never really drank because I just don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that person that can't go pick her up because I've been drinking all afternoon. And I don't want to be that person, if something happens, I can't pick her up at midnight. But at the same time, I got older and I started getting a lot more hungover, and it didn't serve me. And so a lot of those things that didn't serve me or add to my life, I cut out of my life. And being able to just not drink or not over drink or overdo it, I think was a big maturity, like, billboard to her, saying, well, he's my teammate. He's in this with me. You know what I mean? He's, even when it was kind of bad in the beginning, like, I was consistent. I showed up, and I showed up, and I showed up. And if she called, I was there. If she called, I was there. If she needed me to take Adeline, I was there. And it, you can talk and talk and talk and talk. and even have the other person, just like any other social situation, try to throw you under the bus or try to make you the bad guy or try to make you the asshole so that they can be the victim and this and that. But if you're consistent, your actions will scream a lot louder than anybody's opinions or words. And I didn't really get into the any of that nonsense because I made it a point that my daughter knew I was always there for her. And if something ever got weird and like, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to have her as much as if something got court system, because we don't have anything in the court system. That's how she comes and goes as she pleases. But if something did where I only got to see her like 4 days a month, like a lot of fathers, I always wanted to make sure that she would know that I fought as hard as I could for her. You know what I mean? That I did, that there would never be a doubt in her mind that I would have either been there, am there, or I fought as hard as long as I could, and it just didn't work out in my favor. You know what I mean?
Exactly. What's a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Get out of your own way. Like, leave the pity party. Because, there was early on in my journey, there was a quote that I'd read, and it always kind of stuck with me. Pain is inevitable, misery is optional. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if I could tell my younger self, fuck, quit crying about shit that you can't change. You know what I mean? Stop living in misery and like dwelling on the past that you can't do anything about. Because if you spend all your energy and all your time and all your thoughts thinking about things that you can't change, I mean, but also learn the lessons that you should learn from those situations that you can't change. Like, don't disregard the past, but don't dwell on it. Don't be stuck in depression over things that you can't change. Take the life lesson, move forward. You can wish and wish and wish that things were different, but nothing, it's not going to make a difference.
You can't change the past, but you can change your future.
Mm-hmm. Usually. And the other thing that, like with that though, I would tell myself, I would tell anybody that, and I do tell people, like, start. It doesn't really matter. Like, you're never going to feel ready. You're always going to think it's going to stay like it is, but start being the co-parent that you want the other person to be, and they will start matching you. If you're not poking back, you know what I mean? If you're the civil, empathetic, understanding person that you want them to be, sometimes they're going to start mirroring you. You know what I mean? It's really hard to be one-sided like that. I mean, it's human nature to mirror the people that you're around. But the sooner you start, the sooner things will actually change, rather than wishing, if you don't take action, nothing changes.
Exactly. I completely agree. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and really fueling this epic discussion. I swear this was 90% you.
I get on rambles sometimes.